Hey, welcome back to the Astrology of Things. I'm your host and certified astrologer Sheena, and today is September 10th, and it is 10:51 p.m. So I'm back with another video in my Sun Through the Houses Synastry series, and today I'll be focusing on Sun in the 7th house in Synastry. So this can be for romantic, familial, business, or other relationship types. So I want to note that this will be a general overview, and that in order to fully understand the nuances in any synastry overlay, you really have to consider each individual's natal chart, their planetary placements, and the aspects that occur between their planets in their natal chart before you can begin to understand the specific impact of any synastry overlay. So, for example, in the case of the sun, you first have to look at how the sun behaves in the sun person's natal chart. You have to take a look at what house that sun is placed in and what aspects that sun is making to other planets in their chart before you can begin to understand how that one person's sun is going to impact the person whose chart we're comparing it to, or the house person's chart in this particular case. All right, so now that's out of the way, let's look at what the sun in 7th house signifies in astrology. So the sun is a luminary, and it is the ruler of Leo. And the sun is symbolic of the ego, our actions, goals, achievement. It represents attention, performance, acting, and self-expression, and even pride and confidence, while the 7th house is the domain or area of our life that deals with committed relationships, business and contractual partnerships, which includes, marriage. And it also represents our employer, open enemies, legal court battles, and it also represents our shadow side, the dark side. This is exactly opposite to our first house. And the 7th house is an angular house. So any planets that come into this house have more potency and impact to the house person than it would if it were in a succedent or a cadent house. And when I say potent, I mean that the sun's actions toward the house person would more so disrupt the house person's foundations and overall life, whether this is in a good way or a bad way. And then lastly, I wanted to note that in synastry, the planet is the primary actor and initiator in this relationship dynamic. So the sun causes the events of this overlay while the house person responds to it. And then, that relationship then turns more into like a cause and effect. So the sun is the cause, the house person is the effect, and they go back and forth. So in this dynamic, the sun person's goals are in alignment with the house person. So the sun person sees the house person as a perfect partner that they could team up with, whether this is in marriage or business. So the sun person may create or find ways to get the house person involved in their business and their goals. And so the sun person is going to throw many opportunities at the house person's way, hoping for the house person to bite on one of those opportunities. So the sun is symbolic of authority and energy and heat as well. So the house person could feel a bit of pressure in this overlay, potentially feeling obligated to get involved and accept accept the sun person's offers to do business or to develop some sort of relationship between the two. So I'd say that the sun person can be persistent in trying to find ways around the no's and the rejections that the house person is throwing, or maybe throwing back at the sun person. So if a relationship does form between the two, the sun person may want to call all of the shots because they are in this authoritative role, and the sun person could do a bad job at really including the house person into all of the details and reasonings behind why certain decisions were made or not made. So as much as this dynamic can form a business partnership or marriage, if these partnerships and contracts fail, if someone breaches the contract or breaks any other rules in the contract, this can also form open enemies between the two people here, and they can grow to despise one another. And to the extreme, things could end up in a legal battle so that they can resolve any of the conflicts that came up through these marriage or business contracts. And then also I'd say that since the sun is tied to ego, if things turn bad in these business dealings or any contracts that are made between the sun and the house person, the sun person can get petty if the sun person's ego gets bruised, or if the sun is not able to kind of carry forth or carry out the actions that they really, really wanted to. For some reason, like, the sun feels a sense that they rule over, whatever business dealings that the two have, even though it should be, a partnership, right? So a real life example of this synastry overlay can be seen in Kim and Kanye's relationship. So Kanye's sun falls into Kim's 7th house. So if you're interested in learning more about the sun in the 7th house, it would be a good idea to go kind of look into Kim and Kanye's relationship and kind of what's been playing out in that dynamic. So continuing with this idea of contracts in business, the 7th house also represents the actual company that we work for. So the sun could represent a boss in an employee-boss relationship, the sun being the boss, or this could represent or present itself as a prospective employee and recruiter relationship. So the recruiter in this case is kind of scouting out candidates for the company. So that recruiter's sun could fall into the house person's 7th house. And then also the sun person sheds light on the house person's shadow and dark side. So the shadow side is a part of ourselves that we can't see unless in relationship to another. So this dark side can be an accepted or rejected part of the house person. But either way, that sun person will shed light on this side and bring it into awareness for the house person. So if the house person is accepting of their own dark side, the house person feels more comfortable with expressing that side of themselves in front of the house person, in front of the sun person when the sun person is around. And the house person can feel like they automatically trust this sun person for that reason, and can feel like the sun person is accepting of that dark side. But if the house person rejects their own dark side, the house person may feel uncomfortable in this synastry overlay, as they are not quite ready to face and meet their dark side or accept their dark side. So in a way, I'd also say that the house person can live vicariously through the sun person, and from the outside looking in can experience through observation what it would be like to express their shadow side. So on a lighter note, this overlay can also describe the house person seeing the sun person as a role model and positive authority figure when it comes to relationships and partnerships. So the sun person could be a relationship or business coach, which in turn helps that house person bring forth and bring more momentum into their relationship life. But this could also play out where the sun person brings fame or recognition to the house person's relationships. So in a mundane way, or as a mundane example, this could play out as a photographer or paparazzi or social media personality who video records and photographs the house person and their significant other. And so that photographer could publish the images of the couple online, or they could develop the photos that they took and give to the house person to keep and or post on their own. So when thinking of this example, I always think about those Instagram videos where a photographer just walks up to a couple and asks them a couple questions and asks them, what it's like to be in love and if they're in love and if they're a couple. So also this could, play out as the house person. Maybe the house person hired a photographer to take pictures at her wedding, and the photographer's son just happens to fall in her 7th house. So, in my opinion, the synastry dynamic with the sun in the 7th house is not particularly romantic. I'd say the root of this energy is business based. So if you are thinking about this from the romantic perspective, it'll be good to take a look at other placements to find other indicators that can indicate more of a romantic relationship. And yeah, I think the sun is just better placed in some of the fire houses. So like the 1st, 5th, or 9th house. I think that's a great placement for the sun in synastry relationships. And again, I do think this placement is great for business purposes. But again, you have to make sure the sun is not making any hard aspects to other malefic planets, to see, if that business relationship would be a positive one or a more negative one. So again, whether or not this placement works out in a good or bad way all depends on how the sun acts in the individual's natal chart and what energy that sun brings into the house person's life. All right, so that's all I have for sun in the 7th. I'll see you in the next one.